Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for the second day of Skylanders Week 2. That's right, we have double dosage of 2. Actually, we have triple dosage of 2 because we're talking about the second game within the Skylanders franchise today, that being the Skylanders Giants. It's Tuesday within the week-long ranking of every single Skylanders games, or at least for levels within those games. So naturally that means today we're going to be looking at the 20 levels from Skylanders Giants. Now, the 4 Adventure Pack levels from Spyro's Adventure did carry over into Giants, which is why they shall be included in the ranking as well. So naturally, with that all being said and done, the same factors that apply to Spyro's Adventure apply here. We're looking at a level's overall quality, as well as just any sort of nostalgia that has a more personal tethering to me as a player, reasons as to why I might care for a level more so than someone else might, which is why we should be respectful of one another's opinions, because they are personal, they are unique, and they are most of all important. So definitely be sure to respect such things in the comment section below, where I really do recommend you share your ranking of all of the levels from Skylanders Giants. But now enough of my rambling. It's a very straightforward concept. We're continuing with the same concept, so just like yesterday, we're ranking all the levels, but this time it's for the 20 in Skylanders Giants. And now if that hasn't been said and done, let's roll the intro without further ado. This level ranking is going to start the exact same way as it did for Spyro's Adventure. Since the adventure packs from that game are also accessible in Giants, that means taking the bottom spot is Empire of Ice once again. This level is terrible and not even worth my time, so I'm just going to use what I said last time and not bother giving this level any more light of day. If there is one thing I hate most of all games, it is ice physics. The idea is to feel in control as you interact with your characters. So using these physics, it turns your Skylanders from fun characters you take control of to beat up bad guys into characters that randomly slide around the level without any sort of predictability behind it. This restrictive movement is poor for pacing due to just how unfun and tedious it can get. And that's just scratching the surface. Gathering catapult parts is painful, and the wall sequence to conclude the level is anticlimactic and far too long, resulting in the pacing of the level being dragged to an absolute crawl. This level makes simple tasks feel impossible. It takes away from the fun you're having. As an adventure pack level, it's supposed to add to your experience of playing the game, not take away from it. I despise this level with every fibre of my being, so it's only appropriate for it to be at the very bottom of this ranking. Number 19 is Pirate Seas. The main interesting factor behind this level is the Life Elemental Gate. It's basically the best part as you can get the nice and fast-paced blend of puzzle solving and platforming. It was such a good section, in fact, that the Undead Gate in Cutthroat Carnival is designed in a very similar manner. Outside of that, Pirate Seas is just as terrible as it was back in Spyro's Adventure, so let's look back and see what I said about it for the initial ranking in that video, because what I said then still applies now. But number 22 is going to be Pirate Seas, yet another disappointing adventure pack level which adds very little to the game. I love the music, it really immerses you into the pirate theme, building up an atmosphere, but outside of that, there are too many pirate card games that slow down the pacing of the entire level, as they're simply just way too easy to complete. Less of these minigames and more difficulty would have made these a much more welcomed addition. I would also make them an optional task, except for the first and the last game, so then you could learn how the game was played and then be challenged by it at the very end. On top of that, the pirate ship sequence is long and tedious, just like destroying the wall in Empire of Ice. It makes the level have a really anticlimactic ending, making you feel unaccomplished by the end. It's a shame because I like the level design for traditional combat and exploration. There are some cleverly placed collectibles here, and the pirate theme for the town is quite fresh and welcome when compared to the rest of the levels. I wish we had more of that incorporated into the level over the dull and forgettable pirate card games. For number 18, we finally have a non-adventure pack level, so in my personal opinion, the worst base level is the Oracle. It's also the most overrated level in Skylanders history. You play through 4 short challenges which feel disconnected from one another, and it results in a basic level, poorly executed with no substance, and it ends far too quickly. The hitboxes are also dumb, whether it's for dipping ball in the spider section, small area for the ambush sequences, or unforgiving crusher hitboxes when you're giant. Deaths very rarely feel like they're your own fault, and the cheapness of this level is just plain infuriating. To say this level is good, based solely on the fact that the Oracle says the name of the Skylander you're currently playing as in the opening cutscene, is absurd. I could say the name of the Skylander at hand, and does that somehow improve the quality of this video tenfold? I didn't think so. I hate this level because it's one of the last the game has to offer, and the level itself is so anticlimactic and unrewarding, as well as cheap for no good reason whatsoever, making it an undeserving lock killer. Number 17 is Glacier Gully. Most of what I said of Empire of Ice applies here, but now the ice physics are more necessary and therefore even more annoying. At least you don't have to chase down catapult parts and destroy walls for what feels like 2 hours straight. The level instead ends with a puzzle. It's easy and fast paced, but better than destroying a wall at the end of the day. I think the pacing on this level is even better than what the Oracle had to offer, and it's also a more expansive level as you have areas to actually explore. And even though I hate ice physics, I do think they're incorporated into the design of the level quite well, making it unique amongst all of the other base game levels, though it's still tedious and it dwindles in comparison to other levels such as Timer for Giants. Our 16th slot is dedicated to the first level of the game. It's interesting visually because we're taken back 10,000 years into Skylanders past. The architecture reflects that, and it's a neatly detailed level. It also introduces you to all of the game mechanics in a smooth and fast-paced nature. Its collectibles are cleverly placed. You really need to think in order to get them all in one run, such as going down to the scroll but then going back up to perform the giant Geronimo and receive the treasure chest. It makes exploration feel quite rewarding indeed. Obviously, with this being as basic as it is, it still can't hold a candle to most of the other levels in this game, despite what the level does well. But for number 15, we're returning to the Adventure Pack levels with Dragon's Peak. Number 17 is Dragon's Peak, yet another level where potential is lost due to uneven pacing and tedious sections. Flying with Flavius could have been fun if he didn't make annoying remarks every 5 seconds. These sections are also repetitive and dragged out. They all seem so similar that they all just kind of blend together for me. What do you want to do exactly? Rank every mid-air mine in this level? But that being said, I love how the platforming works in this level. It's the best challenge the level has to offer, because otherwise the fire hazards are cheap and needlessly punishing. It overcompensates for lack of punishment in Leviathan's Lagoon, I suppose. The enemies are also needlessly tough. The bomb guys explode as soon as they get close to you, making them far too difficult to dodge, especially for non-projectile Skylanders. Once again, alienating players who don't pick those projectile characters. When the idea of the game in the first place is to have the freedom of choice when picking your Skylanders, so alienating you just for your specific choice of Skylander, it is a shame it goes against the whole idea of the game in the first place. And then there's the boss, which is a huge problem because it's simply just a cutscene which is beyond disappointing. It builds up to the fight, only for the tensions to de-escalate so easily, and once again it leaves you with an unfulfilled feeling come the end. It's a shame that the really good level design and great platforming challenge and unique visuals go to waste in a level where the pacing is terribly inconsistent and you're let down by a cutscene over a boss fight. Number 14 is Junkyard Isles. You play through 3 different sequences which get progressively harder, making for satisfying level design which keeps you engaged and helps you to feel fulfilled upon. The pacing is broken up by constantly changing locations, however, and each new sequence isn't unique enough, making the whole level kinda mesh together and feel less memorable as a result. So it begs the question, why even change islands in the first place if the theme won't change all that much to go alongside it? Visually, this level is generic and has nothing to help it stand out. I do, however, love the music. Playing through the level with this track helps keep you invested even further than you are already, and it means that you can't find yourself entirely bored. Overall, the gimmicks here are unique enough and the challenge is slightly greater than Time of the Giants, making this level barely able to edge out 14th place on this ranking in my personal opinion. But number 13 is going to be Cutthroat Carnival, a level with some interesting puzzles. I like the execution of the moving ship puzzle in particular, needing to move it to push the block onto it and then move it back to push the block into the hold, and needing to push it back to the isolated island, then push it back once again once you have the key. It's clever, though I must admit it's a little repetitive and it can get a little slow paced and dull after a while. And speaking of getting slow paced and dull after a while, Skystones is exhausting throughout this level. It's fun to have this new mechanic being introduced, and obviously this is for level where they want to give you plenty of tutorials to get you used to the concept of the game. But you only need to have these tutorials in the level to a certain extent, and this certainly is way too much of an extent for a single level. Skystones is too frequent, and it puts a hindering on the pacing. Especially when you go back to replay this level, it becomes a chore to forcefully be put into these Skystones matches time and time again. The music does fit the level very well, and it draws you into the carnival as a result. I'm engaged when playing this level, it's just not great for pacing. And it isn't for most fun either. I like the puzzles in the final section as well, though it's made pretty easy when you're told straight up what it is you need to do, and you're blocked from making mistakes. So I can't praise it for not holding your hand and just leaving you to figure it out for yourself, because the game actually does the opposite of that, and it holds your hand throughout the whole experience. It can get a little condescending at times. Number 12 is Aerial Assault. I like how this level is broken down. You fend off invading enemies, shoot down attacking ships, then board the ghost ship yourself. The constant change in scenery is welcome and makes every twist of the level feel fresh based upon what came before it. It's also all themed and justified, unlike Junkyard Isles, and the difficulty here is insane. You truly feel like you're taking on this massive army, and the ghost ship becomes more challenging and more menacing as a result, because it's not our home turf and we're not familiar with it, unlike the Dread Yacht. The problem here is how basic the level is. You fight enemies, shoot things, fight enemies, avoid hazards, rinse and repeat for 40 minutes straight. The level has such little exploration to offer that it has to put all of the exploration and collectible gathering into the elemental zones the level has to offer. Without these elemental zones, the level is simply bland and repetitive. You feel the grind and the challenge, it's satisfying to come out victorious, but none of that withdraws from the basic level design and the feeling that this is just here for filler content, bringing a slow pace to the story and flow of the game, even though the level itself flows quite well. Number 11 is Lost City of Arcus. Despite not being the last level of the game, this level definitely possesses the hardest section of the entire game, having to deal with an onslaught of enemies that hit you hard and fast and wide. It becomes difficult to dodge their attacks, plus their health bars are insane, leading to magnificent fights that keep you on the edge of your seat and excited, though it can also feel cheap at the same time, making this level more of a frustrating experience over a satisfying one. At least when you're playing locks it feels that way. This level also feels as though it doesn't take full advantage of its setup. Despite being the Lost City of Arcus, the architecture is similar to what we've seen already. We're given slightly altered bombs rather than something cooler and more unique. Same goes for the blocks and platforms used to roll the massive bomb, so because of this, when compared to the other two Arcane levels, this one is quite forgettable. It ends on an anticlimactic puzzle which isn't nearly as challenging as the combat scenario that preceded it. It works well to catch your breath, but that's about it. The level ends abruptly, and the whole level just doesn't really flow. It feels like you're just going from one section to another, rather than exploring this large, expansive lost city. In other words, the level doesn't feel grand enough, and the level design isn't anything we haven't seen already, so it's nothing to write home about. But kicking off for top 10 at number 10 is Troll Home Security. Once again, this level prides itself on being simple level design executed to perfection. The level doesn't have flow, you just go from one section to another, but the sections still distinguish themselves and act as memorable chunks in their own right. It also gets intense and rewards your patience as you can power through the Cadden section quickly, or take your time and minimise risk. Regardless, the outcome feels like it's purely your fault. Nothing about this level feels particularly cheap. Like all of the levels in this game, you do feel handicapped when not playing as a giant. You're forced to complete lock puzzles, which brings the level's pace into a crawl, but there are still cleverly placed collectibles, and this level does present nice areas to explore. The water elemental gate is the absolute highlight here. The puzzles link up with the rest of the area quite nicely, making everything flow and have a nice pace to it. The Gilgren ambush is intense and you're invested in the challenge. It's a shame that the best and most challenging part of the level boils down to the elemental gate. I also feel as though the platforming section is cut a little short. They could have really expanded upon what we saw here and gave us some truly unique and challenging platforming sections. Ones where you fall and you have to make your way back through the previous levels as punishment, as that would have been so much more cooler than what we actually got in the end. But number 9 is going to be Secret Vault of Secrets. This takes the Arcane section from Arcane Armory and expands upon it, turning what I found to be a massive flaw in that original level into a fun and welcome fast-paced section of the game. The maneuverability, speed and flow between attacks of the Arcane robot this time, as well as the greater balance of enemies to actually hit and the ease of hitting them successfully, is what turns this Arcane section into something I actually enjoy this time. Plus, it's not as jarring, you're not taken off guard as you expect these sections, and the anticipation gets you excited for them, rather than being taken off guard and feeling like you're missing out on a better portion of the level by tackling the Arcane section instead. The dams are also distinctive from one another, and it doesn't once feel repetitive, as the challenge changes up each time and it gives you a break from combat and the Arcane robot, so instead you need to avoid hazards or quickly make your way through sections before time runs out on the orbs. This adds to the fast-paced nature and intensity of the level, as you have urgency. Overall, the level just flows incredibly well. The constant shifts in gameplay is always distinctive and welcomed, because it makes the level far from stale over time, and I would personally improve the level simply by shortening the Arcane sections. Even though they're good, they can still outstay their welcome and start to be a hindrance on the pacing. I'd also give each dam something visually to distinct them. Yes, gameplay is different at each one, but having the same visuals constantly thrown in your face does become quite dull after a while, decreasing the memorability of the level. I also have to mention, before moving on to the next level, the fact that you actually lose in this level. It re-establishes the stakes of the game, and it ends on an emotional note. The level does a great job displaying the personality of the ghost robot, and you grow to care for him, so when he's taken away from you, you're left quite upset, and it makes the ending of the level all the more memorable for it, even if I am mixed on everything that came before it. Number 8 is Bringing Order to Chaos. Being the final level of Giants, this level balances everything that led up to this moment, and it does so in a challenging manner that keeps you invested and leaves you satisfied come the end. You have intense and difficult combat to deal with, hazards, puzzles and platforming, all leading to a boss where you run away. It's anticlimactic and you think you've reached the end. Just as you're about to leave the area a little disappointed, Chaos pounces back, takes you by surprise and throws you into an intense boss battle where you truly feel the stakes and scale of what's occurring before you. The fight between the massive robots in the background is a visually stunning detail, and this feels like a true test of everything you've endured so far, given the whole book ending a nice satisfying ribbon to tie everything all up with. Number 7 is Rumble Town. You have a fun personality found in Brock that keeps you invested in the level, and you're motivated to move on as you can finally get the opportunity to put an end to this arrogant fool by advancing. The chase is thrilling, and the level design has its moments of pure genius. To reach sealed off areas, you constantly have to drop after setting up blocks, and it's a clever way in which to reach said collectibles. They really reward you for your puzzle solving and exploration capabilities, but here you have to combine both those puzzles and the exploration. If you haven't explored, you can't figure out what you need to do for the puzzles, and then once you've explored, you need to figure out how the puzzles are incorporated into it. Then there's also the combat, which is nicely balanced, and you're always left with plenty of room to maneuver, so nothing ever feels cheap or unjust when you fail. And then this is where the combat and the hazards are also combined, particularly for the arena, which can get intense, especially when there's fire in the middle, so you need to keep to the outsides and avoid the fire and the enemies all at once. Point is, things stack up in this level. It's a great way to progress the difficulty forward, and it's just a great way to combine all the different gameplay mechanics that have been introduced so far as a way to expand upon them all at once. Yes, needless to say, the level design is in fact incredibly clever. So between the fun interactions you have with NPCs, the ingenious level design, and the fun puzzles to tackle, it makes Rumble Town a standout and quite memorable amongst all the other levels we're ranking on this here video. But still, it winds up being a bore when compared to even greater levels such as Chaos's Castle, a level just short of the top 5. This level gives you variety with hazards, platforming, puzzles and combat to boot. It also possesses a nice looping level design where you get to go underneath the castle through the cave to gain access to a button and drop down to where you started the level and finally make your way through those tall and rather quite intimidating doors actually. Then in the castle itself you see the double lock You release both locks, make your way back to the door, so even getting into the arena feels like a quest to get there, and it's satisfying, making the arena itself feel like a reward. This level is once again a level where you fail at the end. Your intent was to capture chaos, and you're unsuccessful, but you've had such an amazing journey getting there that your failure in the end just kind of fades away. I also love the detail in this level. You see portraits of Chaos which actually add to his personality. You learn something new about this character through your exploration of this level, and it's ingenious in its execution, using visual storytelling as a game should. After all, it's a visual medium. This really feels like a castle that belongs to Chaos. Since he's the main villain, you constantly feel that threat looming around you. You're truly invested in the level because of this, and it's brilliant. But kicking off the top 5 is what I call the start of the almost flawless 5. It's really hard to rank these final 5 levels. They're all so good that I wish they could all be number 1, but that's not quite how ranking videos work now, is it? So at the bottom of these 5 has to be Auto Gyro Adventure. First and foremost, this level is gorgeous. The blues and yellows really pop, and the architecture feels Archean to give it that distinctive feeling from every other level. The level is also insanely fast paced as the copter travels at great speed and controls flawlessly, making it a fun subversion from the rest of the level. And these sections come in at the perfect time, as there's always a welcome change from the current traditional gameplay you've been conducting in all the different rooms. In other words, none of these sections outstay their welcome, so it all flows together quite nicely in one fast-paced excursion. It's a challenging level as well, with plenty of tough enemies to deal with. The length is appropriate as it helps with the scale of the level. Everything is meant to feel grand, and this is a true challenge. It demands determination as much as it does skill, so being determined to power through this marathon makes the challenge all the more rewarding when you finally best it. The final section is chaotic and such a blast to speed through the entire section as you chain all the boosts together and then just barely make it through the doors before they close. It's a rather thrilling segment indeed, and it's one hell of a climactic way to end off the level. However, I do think it's quite jarring to land during the other copter segments of the level, since it takes away from the current pacing and trajectory of the level, and therefore it breaks up your immersion. However, the main benefit is that the exploration and collectible gathering becomes that much more satisfying, but it does leave the other sections of the level for ones where you are forced into them and there is no option to get around them. It does leave them feeling a little bit more barren because there are less collectibles gathered in those sections. You need to land for a grand majority of collectibles, and if you miss them, you have to replay the entire level all over again, which is a problem when the level is as long as this. But once you do land, it's pretty straightforward as to where the collectibles are, and it leaves very little collectibles to be found and few areas to actually explore in the parts of the level that you play no matter what, is basically the perfect way of summarising exactly what it is I just said. So of the entirety of the Arcane trilogy, this is the level with the best pacing. It truly feels like a marathon, unlike Lost City of Arcus, which just feels too short and leaves you feeling unsatisfied. And it's more of a teaser for the final level than a level in of itself, but Auto Gyro Adventure certainly doesn't possess that same flaw because you travel in a copter. It's not really good for pacing, but it really lets the scale of this place settle in as you're traversing these tunnels and seeing firsthand just how large this place truly is. It begs the question as to how the Lost City of Arcus even got lost in the first place, given that it's so big. Like seriously, how do you even lose something that big? But moving along to number 4, without further ado, we have Molkin Mountain. This is a welcome change of scenery compared to what's came before it. The combat is also challenging and the arena is intense with progressive difficulty, so you feel rewarded each wave as you truly feel the sense of progression. For nostalgia's sakes, when it comes to this level, I was particularly looking forward to this level on my first playthrough because I knew T-Rex's Soul Gem lied in wait. It was the same reason why I was really looking forward to Treetop Terrace and Spyro's Adventure, knowing that I could finally get Gilgrunt's Soul Gem. And obviously, I own these characters no matter what, having got the starter pack from Spyro's Adventure and the booster pack from Giants. So just my level of excitement going into this level was huge, and then if the level paid off, it was really great to play through this for the first time and just see what this level had in store. It was very refreshing after Jolex's Big Rig to have such different scenery. And then there's the exploration of the level, which feels mountainous as there are always side entrances and caves to find. It really rewards your exploration as collectibles are tough to find here. In fact, I even remember finding one by accident when my cousin as Flashwing lost control and dropped down to a ledge that helps you find a treasure chest. But the treasure chest isn't even found in this cave. You simply find the apparatus that's used to switch the platform over so you can access the treasure chest, which you actually physically see later in the level. So you see it later in the level, and then replaying the level, you have to figure out how it is you access that treasure chest. It's very clever level design and collectible placement, something to tease you for your replays of the level, so that then you keep your eyes peeled for it. Or in my case, you just give your cousin Flashwing, let him go nuts and lose control. Anyway, when it comes to the rest of the level, there are plenty of enemies and hazards and puzzles to really progress with the difficulty, but they're all balanced and never overstay their welcome to make for a visually stunning level that is fun and keeps you engaged. But number 3 has to be Drill X's Big Rig. In a level concluded by a singing drill, for this to rank here, it goes to show you just how good the other levels are. Drill X has a ton of personality, making the boss more engaging than just a generic enemy. But the level leading up to him has a theme maintained throughout. The rig is huge and it's really fun to explore. It's fast paced too, because even slow characters are sped up by the conveyor belts. This level has a universal appeal, given that no matter the Skylander you're playing as, you're guaranteed to enjoy yourself. There is a balance of hazards, exploration, puzzle solving, platforming, and challenging combat to make Drill X's Big Rig feel like an unforgettable experience. You leave the level with a massive smile on your face. In fact, you leave the level with a better feeling than what you did going into it. And it all suits the tone of Skylanders perfectly, as the singing drill is pure genius. So ultimately, Drill X's Big Rig, even number 3, is a crime in and of itself for a level as renowned and as iconic as this one. But we have 2 even greater levels coming up, and that includes Willikin Village as our runner-up. After the Dark Light Crypt, this level took up the world switching mechanic, resulting in excellent level design which encourages exploration. But you can't just get around, you need to observe and figure out which world you need to be in order to tackle a certain situation with the most efficiency. It adds further to the depth of the exploration to this level, and with dolls that live, it gives this level life and energy. The music is incredibly atmospheric and it really pulls you into the level. Once again, there is a great balance of combat, puzzle solving, and hazard avoidance. It helps make the level feel fast paced, and throughout the entire level, you're left to marvel at just how well designed everything is, as well as the attention to detail based upon which world you're currently in. The Chompy Mage boss fight also takes full advantage of the world switching mechanics. It tests you on what you've learned about the mechanic throughout the course of the level, though I do think Willikin gives you a few too many tips on how to beat the evil Chompy Mage. It would have been better without any help at all, so you could be left to experiment and find the best strategies for yourself. Outside of that, the level is particularly flawless. I always feel a sense of accomplishment when beating it, and I love how in the Chompy Mage boss fights you really put emphasis upon the detail between switching the 2 worlds. The background Chompies change colour based on which world you're in, so you know which Chompies you're going to be facing against when the Chompy Mage summons them. And then there's also the background lore behind this level, which is clever, and it really is fun to explore for yourself. It certainly makes Willikin Village a worthy number 2 on this list. Number 1 is going to be a level which doesn't even originate from Giants. That's right, they introduced the Dark Light Crypt as Spyro's Adventure, and then when Giants came out, they were unable to make a level that even topped it. Willikin Village might be great, but it never would have gotten to be the level that it is if not for Dark Light Crypt laying the foundations of this world switching mechanic that Willikin Village ultimately expanded upon. As the classic saying goes, you just can't beat the original. Switching between worlds gives combat and puzzle solving an extra layer of depth. Only in certain worlds can certain things be accomplished, so your resourcefulness is rewarded. Oculus even points out your cleverness, and being complimented by a villain really adds to the rewarding sense, since it's allowed to truly settle in because you're being complimented by a villain, no less. It also adds further to the depth of Oculus as a villain. He's always looming in this level, so you're constantly reminded of the end goal and the challenge you're yet to face. The level is atmospheric and beautiful no matter what world you're in, but each world is visually distinctive from one another, giving you reason outside the combat and puzzle solving to actually shift worlds, so that you can see what the other world looks like in comparison to what you see already. This level feels like a marathon. The length adds to its grand scale and the atmosphere of the level, so you can truly feel invested within it and make your victorious moments feel all the more satisfying. The maze section is so well designed, you forget how truly long it is, and the fast-paced nature makes time fly as you play through this level, constantly investing you in what it is that you see. The Oculus boss fight is very unique and unlike anything else you've seen throughout the game thus far. The patterns of his attacks are fun to dodge, and you're always involved in the fight as you need to interact with everything you see before you, rather than just fight the boss in a traditional manner. This makes the boss, and by extent the entire level, more memorable and rewarding. This level has all the best elements of all the other levels perfectly meshed together. It's fun, challenging, visually pleasing, well designed, memorable, meaningful, and it's even an inspiration for future level designs in Skylanders such as Willikin Village. With all that in mind, how could I possibly put any other level at the #1 spot? But now that having been said and done, this ranking is coming to an end, so let's roll that outro without further ado. I cannot, in good conscience, end off this video without first thanking all of my incredible channel members whose continued support help make these videos possible. Without them, these videos would be near impossible to make, so from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate every last one of them. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, there are plenty of options on screen now to explore, and please consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. On that note, this video is coming to an end, so thank you so much as always for watching. Until the next video arises, peace!